Welcome to Ascension with V, where we talk about spiritual awakening, ascension, and everything in between. I'm your host, Stashia Jeanette, aka V, and today we have a special guest who's about to take us on a journey with their unique experiences. Jenna Faye Madden, please give us your introduction and what it is that you do.
Hey V, thanks so much for having me here and everybody who is listening to this episode. I am pumped to be here. And yes, my name is Jenna Faye Madden, and my work in the world, my expertise is really what my brand is all about, which is soul meets strategy. So really working with those who are on the awakening path and working with the vehicle of business to elevate themselves and their consciousness, their leadership, but ultimately to get the ripple of impact of their work out in the world in bigger and bolder ways.
Okay. So now when you say the vehicle, I talk about, our divine vehicle frequently, but what does the vehicle mean in terms of what it is that you do and how can we break that down for people who don't know what essentially the business's vehicle means? What is that in layman terms?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I see a lot, you probably see this too, is when we go on the awakening path,
Mhm.
so many of us are guided to, of course, then follow more of our purpose, our passion, our soul mission. All these things get
Mhm.
uncovered. And I feel like for not everybody, for many of us, though, that leads us to the path of entrepreneurship, where we don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to be in a lot of the more like matrix old paradigm systems. We want to work for ourselves. And I feel like beyond the freedom, obviously, that can give us, which is a huge piece, it's also because I feel so many of us have gifts. We have healed on our journey, and
Yeah.
we want to reach people with our own message, our own story, and ultimately help people who are maybe a few steps behind us, or even if they're on the same level or frequency. We really are guided, I find so many of us, to work with
Right.
other people, whether that's in coaching, healing, nutrition, so many different ways. So I feel that business in itself is a vehicle to evolving our leadership, our consciousness, and also a vehicle to abundance, of course, in this lifetime, and to also impact people. So the business itself is really a way for us to that, because otherwise, let's say if we don't have the business piece, well then a lot of the time we're just kind of being inspirational, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the business to me means there's a transaction, ideally a transformational transaction, but there's an exchange of energies that's really happening in order to help people have these transformations that otherwise, without the vehicle of business, then we're kind of maybe just consuming content and things, which isn't wrong. But business, I feel like, takes that to the next level of transformation.
Right. And how do you feel like people can further tap into their power of using their vehicle? Where I know a lot of us, especially me personally, when starting Ascension Oracle V, it's been still weird for me to have it as the aspect of, oh, this is absolutely, it's a business, but not only that, the input of it, of having people now view what it is that I do as a business, where they're versus how in the past it was them wanting to come and it just kind of being like this free advice, or like you were just
Mm-hmm.
you just being the go-to person for when they're going through some crazy unexplainable things, right? But how do you feel like people can shift into more easily accepting that this is a business?
Yeah, I love this question, V. I personally feel like it starts first and foremost with us, like ourselves, and how we view ourselves, our
Right.
own identity, how we view the business, how we treat it
Right.
energetically. Because of course, most of us start by treating it kind of more like a hobby. Like it kind of
Right.
happens
Yes.
accidentally, we're like, I
Yes.
gotta get
Yes.
this out there. I gotta tell people about it, which is
Yes.
beautiful. But then usually we hit a point where we're like, holy shit, I'm giving a lot of
Yes.
energy into this, and it's good, but also I gotta pay my bills. And
Yeah.
also, I feel like we get a lot of kind of like tire kicker people. And again, this isn't right or wrong, but it's like if when we're only serving with, say, our free content, well, in many ways we're impacting people, and this is amazing. I feel
Right.
like when we start to take more of a business approach to it, number one, we make sure our needs are met, which from the value exchange perspective I feel like is important. Otherwise we just kind of burn
Right.
ourselves out, or we can't really sustain ourselves most of the
Right.
time. So the business piece is, I feel like, partly making our own needs met, and also because it calls people into a deeper level of transformation. I find beyond what can just happen from free content, a lot can
Right.
happen from free content, but once we're actually circulating and investing time, money, energy to be held by somebody and be supported, of course, so much more usually happens and is possible. So I find we first start by shifting our own identity and going from somebody who's inspired sharing messages and content online to somebody who is basically treating it like a business. And
Right.
that doesn't have to be serious or old paradigm or
Right.
boring, but it means, it's like that extra
That,
level
that, that.
of intentionality. And I feel like this comes with things like looking at, okay, well, who do I really want to work with? How am I actually monetizing this? Which, of course, can take so many forms. This could be monetizing YouTube videos and having subscriptions. This could be high ticket coaching. It can be retreats. It can be so many things, but it comes back to us not just kind of being in the business, of creating the content and doing the
Right.
things, but actually going a macro view for the business and zooming out and like sitting down pen to paper and going, okay, well, what's my bigger vision for this thing? Who do I want to serve? How am I actually generating income? What's the message here so I can shift it so people actually see this as a business and not just kind of a friend zone fun person that activates them kind of vibe.
Right, right. And that is, and I think that on top of, I think the putting the barrier between the friend zoneness and people looking at things, also your point of saying not the old Peridium way, and that has been a clash, I think, frequently for a lot of us within the spiritual community of like not wanting to, it's like, okay, I know I need to do this, like business things, but also not trying to dabble back into the old world trap. Like it's a very slippery slope feeling of,
Yeah.
am I doing this the right way, or is this me falling back on old world things?
Yes.
I think that is one of the biggest challenges that not only just I myself have dealt with, but a lot of other people that I have worked with or spoken with. It's kind of like a mind trip of trying to find the sweet spot here with this.
Yeah, I feel like you said some key things in there. And what I get and what I see with so many entrepreneurs, and I was there myself, is when I kind of started the online and the business entrepreneurial journey, I went from one side of the pendulum to
Mhm.
another. So coming from a corporate human resources leadership background, when I had my awakening and I left that to start my own business, which I had no clue, I had no savings, I had no experience. I just was guided, as many of us are to
Right.
start sharing. I rebelled. I was like, screw structure, screw planning. I'm
Yeah.
intuitively led. I'm free flowing. And that kind of
Yeah.
got me to a point, and then I realized I don't feel that safe. And I'm actually kind of burning out because there's no plan. There's no
Right.
plan here, and it's not really a business. And so that's where I had to kind of balance out the scales a little
Right.
bit. But it's a lot of unprogramming, and it's a lot of relearning because we've all been so deeply programmed in
Yeah.
this 3D matrix kind of way how to do life, let alone how to do business. And most of us start
Right.
business and we bring in all of this baggage, and then it
Yeah.
doesn't feel fun. And we're just like brick by brick, often, even as really awakened people, creating a new prison system for ourselves in the form of a business. And I
Right.
find most of us have to go on a journey of finding our own truth within it, which, funny enough, is actually very intuitively led. Like, that's
Led.
one of the traps in itself, is there are no rules. And that's hard, I feel
Exactly.
like, for a lot of us, is there are no rules. There is
It's
not
not.
one blueprint or roadmap.
Exactly.
And we
Exactly.
kind of want like a mommy or a daddy or
To
somebody
like
to
to
like
be
tell us
telling
what to
you,
do.
to be telling you
Yes.
what to literally, literally this, yeah, literally this. It's that like constantly being like, is this what I'm supposed to be? Like, is
Yeah,
this?
I guess that's right.
Yeah, but and it is. It's
It's like, yeah, it's like equal, like I find the real juice, the best path is like equal parts self-responsibility, where we realize like there is no authority who's going to tell us
Hmm.
what to do or the right way
Hmm.
to do it,
Right.
coupled with the fact that there's still a level of structure and things that are required really just within ourselves to have a successful business that can really provide us and our people like what it's really capable of creating as well. It's like the
Right.
identity of the business needs to be an identity of a business rather than like a passion project. And
Right.
we need to be self-responsible a lot of the time to actually just follow the truth of what we know.
Right. Yeah. And it's that definitely like trusting where you're led and what you're receiving as your guidance, and then like applying that intuitively led action to it.
Yeah.
It's literally trying to find the effortless ebb and flow of things and riding with it.
Yes. Yeah, it's, the way I like to think of it too is when we get into entrepreneurship, it's uncharted territory for most of us. Like
Absolutely.
it's uncomfortable, it's edgy, there's no roadmap. And so what I feel like most of us tend to do, and this is why we often default back to our programming of approaching things in a very linear 3D kind of headspace kind of way, is
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable to be in the uncharted waters where there
Water.
is no buddy to really refer to. Yes, there's mentors and guidance, but ultimately a lot of it's back on us. And
Yeah.
we expect that we're supposed to feel really confident. But I feel like the truth behind it is that's not what
Not it.
happens. The real
It's not
truth
it.
is what's required is courage. And the more
Yeah.
moments of courage we have of like, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing, but I'm going to go live
I'm
and
just
do it,
doing
or
it.
I'm going to do this
Yeah.
thing, or I'm going to join, like we figure it out as we go
Yes.
compounds and it creates the confidence, and then
Yes.
in linear time, 3 months, 3 years, whatever it is down the road, we feel like a total boss. It's like, oh, I know how to go
Absolutely.
live. I'm great to pitch this thing. Like we shift our identity through these moments of courage, I feel like, in entrepreneurship that nobody really prepares us for, which makes us feel like we're often wrong or behind or not on track. But actually
Right.
that's what we need to normalize is entrepreneurship's uncomfortable, just like awakening.
Yeah. Exactly that. Like the most uncomfortable thing. It's constantly being like I made a video the other day where it's like stepping out and you just feel like this little new baby fawn, like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, it's this frequently. But you mentioned also something that I'm gonna segue into now. What was your personal awakening experience like?
Yeah, I feel like this fits into the conversation beautifully. My awakening honestly was kind of sudden but gradual at the same time. So when I think back to like a decade ago, about 7 to 10 years ago, I was living a completely different life. I was not awake at all. I was in an abusive relationship. I was working in corporate. I was like 70 pounds overweight, like literally just living a completely different timeline.
Yeah,
And what I mean by it was kind of gradual is I wouldn't really say I was having originally much of a spiritual awakening that I could understand at the time. It was more, I would say, personal development. And so it was me finding myself, it was me ending the relationship and like
right.
standing in my power. Then it was me going to the gym and falling in love with fitness and losing all the weight. It was me discovering entrepreneurship kind of accidentally through network marketing. I think that's a gateway drug for many. And so it
Yeah.
was my gateway drug. And it opened me up though, because I was like, what? People can
Huh?
make money like online. And so I didn't really have like this bigger vision. I would go on to create like a multi 7 figure business or awaken or find my soulmate. Like it wasn't really on my radar, but I had these glimpses of, oh, there could be more. And I
Right.
started going to some conferences and things where it was network marketing, but it was kind of more personal development of like, hey, there's more out there. So I started to think, wow, maybe there's more out there than me just working at this office job that is sucking my literal soul. And I
Yeah.
started dabbling and like building a bit of a business, but it was still kind of that passion project energy. But I like started doing stuff online while I was at my corporate job, and little things started to happen. Like I manifested my now husband of, 5 years. We've been together 8 years. I started going down more of the personal development rabbit hole, and it kind of all just happened because I remember a few key epiphany moments. Like I was at my corporate job and realized I can't do it anymore. I would call my boyfriend, now husband, every day in the parking lot crying, being like, I hate my life. I hate doing this. I don't
I
want to do
say
it
that.
anymore. I hate it. It's draining me. And then it kind of, so I quit that and made kind of a leap pad move into personal training. So it was my first real kind of entrepreneurial move, which synergized nicely with my network marketing. Then that led me, because the trainer, who was my personal trainer, certifier, whatever, facilitator who trained and certified me, she also offered other things like Reiki training. And I was this little sponge at the time. Like, I just quit my job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sign me up for all the things, which included going and getting my Reiki attunements. And that was a big catalyst for me, and a bridge into the spiritual. That kind of was a catalyst after all this personal development stuff that was going on. Like, I had signed up for burlesque dancing, even though I have major stage fright, you know, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I don't know, but I signed up and danced in my underwear on stage. You know, like, I was doing all these things and like stretching my comfort zone, but I wasn't really spiritual yet at that point. So it basically, as I did my Reiki training, then I'd have all these women who wanted to come to me and they're like, can you do a Reiki session for me? And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but sure. And they were loving it and I was loving it. And then I'm like tapping into people's past lives and all these things start happening. And at the same time, and this was in 2016, 2017, one day my boyfriend and I looked at each other and we're like, why are we still in the city? We hate it here. And so we decided to just start traveling full time. And now, you know, 7 years later, we're still traveling full time, which I tell people all the time, being in a conscious relationship, having a business, and travel are probably like the three biggest consciousness expanders that one can do. Like, it's going to initiate you on an accelerated path. And my higher self led me to do all three of those at the same time. And I got schooled, you know, like so much happened. I evolved. I learned a shit ton, you know, like, oh my God, you don't just have $1 million business overnight when you quit your job and just start to travel. And I realized, okay, there's some work that goes into this. And I would say I was pretty on the awakening path. Like, I was hosting New Earth leadership retreats pre-COVID era, but that definitely accelerated things big time. And it was more of a knowing. Like, I had so much consciousness kind of stuff coming up for me, but when that happened, it was like something clicked and I had this inner knowing, I've been training for this for lifetimes. And then I came into like Earth Warrior mode on the internet, waking everybody up and like doing all this stuff. Like, I moved to Nicaragua and had like 1,000 people follow us and help all these people move there. It was crazy.
Wait.
Yeah,
you have to, this has to be a story. You have to tell this story as well. Like, finish this story, but come back to this part, because what?
Yes. Okay, I can divulge into that. So COVID stuff started. I'm assuming most people who are listening to this are on a similar frequency around, you know, how much of an accelerator the last handful of years have been. And
Absolutely.
So for me personally, there was a lot of validation of like, oh, okay, like I knew this. Oh, I sensed that. And like a lot came to a head. And then on kind of a linear timeline, when I'm in Canada right now. Okay. That's where I'm from. And when everything started to lock down here, I was just getting some major guidance, like, we gotta go. And the tipping point for me was when I got carried out of a grocery store while people screamed manslaughter because I didn't have a mask on. And I just looked at my husband and was like, I think we need to go, because we had actually just moved from the southern part of the country where most of us are, and we'd moved like north towards the Yukon, because I thought we need to just get out into the wilderness. I mean, we were at a house, but I thought we need to just like get away from the border and cities and just kind of get off grid for a while. And then I was there getting groceries way up north and realized maybe I actually need to go even further, like out of the country. So at that point, we decided to go to Costa Rica at the time. Okay. And we had, basically, there was some people online who, friends of friends, who had this New Earth community. It sounded really great on paper. And I'm like, nah. We sold everything.
Jenna, immediately, as soon as you said that, I was like,
yeah. Oh, just you wait. So we we're like, well, let's go. Okay. Like maybe we don't need to be the ones trying to like wake people up and do all this. Let's go
Right.
down there and just plug in and we'll leave in 5 days. So we sold everything and bought our flights, did everything to leave and
Sold
move to Costa
everything.
Rica. Everything. Rehomed our animals, which, don't have regrets, but literally I thought we were just like never coming back. We gotta go. The world's gonna collapse. And the day before we flew there, so this is like 4 days post decision, have sold our car, rehomed
Okay.
our pets, let go of our house, like everything's gone. I get
How'd
some
you sell
messages.
everything that fast?
I am good. I tell you. We had a blowout sale on Marketplace and people were coming and saying, "Are you sure that's all you want for this? Like just this much?" I'm like, "Take it.
But
Take it." And, I'll continue with this, but I should rewind that this is what I mean by the gradual awakening, because before this whole escapade had started, even pre
mhm.
COVID, my husband and I had this sensation that like things weren't safe. So a lot of it was very fear driven, but I couldn't really
Wow.
explain what I was feeling. I just knew big shit was coming. And so
Yeah.
we left Canada. We tried moving to Bali. We lived in Australia. We lived in New Zealand. We were just grid working with no
Right.
real knowing of it yet, but we're just like,
Yeah.
we gotta get out of here. We gotta try some places. So when we came back to Canada, all this stuff happened. It wasn't our first rodeo of selling our stuff. So I was like, I was in it. Now the day before we leave, I got some messages from the owner of this kind of community compound. And long story short, it turned out to be a religious sex cult.
No, no,
that
no,
was
no,
a
no.
that was
No,
a
no,
hard
not
no.
no.
So I got some mess. I We hadn't even left yet. No. So
Oh,
we were leaving the next day to fly there. So this
okay.
was the night before. And I got some messages on Messenger from the owner of this New Earth community where I had no idea what we were doing. We had sent her like 5,000 US dollars to rent a little casita on the property. I had no idea that that's not how much a casita costs per month to rent in Costa Rica. But I'm like, get me out of this place. I got to go there.
Right.
She messaged us and said, "Hey, by the way, since you guys are going to be arriving tomorrow, there's a few other things you should know." And then went on to talk about how they had built a church so we could repent for our sins. And by the way, please don't bring any like crystals, oracle decks, anything like that, because like I am the oracle of the community. And also, you look like you're going to really be a great mother. And my husband's role is to spread his seed. So like some pretty extreme stuff, to which I said, "Pardon?" And I
Huh?
phoned her thinking I was gaslighting myself. I'm like, I must be reading this wrong. I must be hearing this
Yeah.
wrong. So we phoned her on speakerphone and she went on a huge like 30-minute tangent reiterating the same things, to which we said, "I don't think this is going to be a fit."
I don't think that.
She said, "I don't want your dirty money then. You're clearly not here for the New Earth timeline." And she refunded us, surprisingly, our money. And
That's nice.
we didn't end up going there, but we were supposed to get on a flight the next day. So I had one of these kind of moments we talked about in entrepreneurship, like I need an adult. I was in a bit
Yeah.
of a trauma response and like what am I doing? I happened to have an internet friend who had been in one of my programs who I really didn't know, but I knew he lived down that way somewhere. So we got on a Zoom call with him that night and told him what happened. And we're still friends to this day, actually. I was messaging this friend today. And he's like, "Guys, it's all good. Just come here. I'm in Nicaragua. We'll get you a driver. Just come stay with me in Nicaragua. We'll figure it out." So that's what we did.
Figure
We
it
flew
out.
the next day to Costa Rica, had a driver take us the 8 hours from San Jose in the middle of Costa Rica across the border and got picked up in Nicaragua. And then the saga continued from there. But that's how we ended up there.
What?
Yeah.
Mind blowingness, like to the 10,000 degree. Like,
So much evolution, like it was this crazy accelerated time. And when we got there, keep in mind this was like 2020, early 2021. None of us know what's going to happen, right? But I
right.
feel like at that point it was all like very intense in the world. Everything was locked down.
Absolutely.
It was
Absolutely. Like,
crazy.
it was.
And I
I was
was like,
burning
I
up.
was there, and I remember I was sitting on the beach with my friends that were there, and I was looking up at the sky, and I was fully expecting a timeline glitch where I'm like, whoa, there's going to be a
Oh,
grand solar flare. Like, it's all about to change. Like,
yeah,
I thought the 3D timeline was done.
was just
And
done.
like,
Yes,
major
tagged out.
ascension was happening while we were there. But
Yeah.
it actually was a little slower, I feel like, in linear time than many of us maybe have expected
Yes.
things to be in this awakening ascension process,
Yeah.
which led us, after a few months of being there, my husband and I, kind of being a little shell shocked, where we're like, holy crap, we just moved to Nicaragua. We didn't even tell our family until we got there. We sent them an email. We're like, by the way, we moved to Nicaragua. I had gone through a grieving process, and like, well, I'm never going to see these folks again because
Right.
the world's ending. So we went through this process, and we ended up going back to Canada because we thought maybe we jumped the gun. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if I was loving Nicaragua. I was kind of shocked. So we went back to Canada while everything was locked down, which was a journey in itself just to get back in
Back.
this country.
Right.
And we spent another year, maybe a little less, back here. Because we were also getting very strong, like, source guidance. And the message was, go light them up. Like, take some of these solar codes from here in Nicaragua. You got what you needed for now. Like, get back into that density and
You can't run
bring
from
some
this.
light. So we did, and I did, honestly. My ego expected things to get better in Canada and like the Western world, but it did not.
Yeah.
And after spending some more time here, we kind of came to another realization of, I think we're good now. Like, we've been here for a while, we're good.
We're good.
So we then sold everything again because we had reacquired everything. We bought a car. Like, this time we brought our pets with us, but we, sold our car again. We sold all our stuff again. And this time, instead of 5 days, we gave ourselves 30 days and got back on a
Okay.
plane
I'm like,
to Nicaragua and went down a little bit more level headed. But this time around, I had time and space. I'd done a lot of research on moving there, and it was on a short list, I think, for a lot of people during this period, because there was a lot of alignment, I feel like, in terms of values, lack of lockdowns, etc. And I'm just naturally a researched, organized person, so I had put together a very in-depth document to help really myself move there.
right.
And I had
Right.
shared it and started a Facebook group and some stuff. Well, it went viral, so to speak, this document being shared. So at that point, I was getting like 50 emails a day of different people in Canada, the US, Australia, mostly the countries that were very locked down, asking
Yeah.
for help to come to Nicaragua. And it kind of just blew up. So all of a sudden, we had hundreds of families moving there, which many of them are still there to date. And so we ended up spending like another 2 years there, cultivating community, really like anchoring it in. But ultimately, I got the guidance again that this wasn't really my place. I couldn't
Right.
picture myself there long term,
Right.
which led us back to Canada again, which I've now at this point realized on the journey by then that I'm meant to do a lot of grid work. I feel like during this
Right.
ascensionary path, like, some people are meant to anchor it in one place and like stay put, and some people
Yeah.
like me have been like this ping pong around the
Going.
globe, like
Right.
moving the energies around, like in myself but also in the grid. And so came back to Canada a lot more regulated and empowered to be
Right.
here. But I'm still not like, I'm a little not all in on the relationship. I'm more keeping my options open in terms of being in this specific place. So that led exactly a year ago on Halloween, from the time when we're recording this. A year ago, my husband and I got Mexican residency, and we drove to Mexico this time last year and spent 6 months doing grid work and spending time there. And kind of same pattern as the past. We got some guidance saying, you're good here for now, go back to Canada. It's like I keep getting sent back to my room.
Right. Literally though, that's what I was gonna say. It's like,
yeah. So now here I am again in Canada, actually preparing to go back to Mexico again in a week, but just to renew our residency. Right now I'm basing myself in Canada, holding the light, but just really have been shown through this process the importance of like adaptability, flexibility, just really paying attention to our own unique path. I can speak from personal experience, but also many
Yeah.
people on their experience, that you get a different kind of result, neither right nor wrong. But when you're running from fear, it
Nah.
tends to not work out and you get
Yeah.
spit back out, versus when you're striding with purpose and
Hmm.
love, things tend to feel a little less intense, and you still might move around, but that's been my biggest shift, is like letting go a lot of the fear of the collective timeline, and
Yeah.
still tuning into my truth and guidance of where I'm meant to be. But I've definitely transmuted a lot in terms of creating stories of like, oh, I'm all in here, like this is it forever, and just actually letting myself be guided.
Yes.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's a whirlwind of a story around my ascension path.
But like mind blowing at it. But to your point of just allowing yourself to be guided and following your own unique path. I mean, it's I think especially within the spiritual community, there's a lot of us who feel like we see other people doing things, one certain way, and like, "Oh, well, they're successful doing it this way, and so like maybe I should be doing X, Y, and Z, and maybe I should be doing X, Y, and Z." But what I have found is that I have hit the most roadblocks every single time I didn't stay in my lane. And be
100%.
and beyond that, not trusting the weight, because your 3D mind will tell you you're falling behind, you're not doing enough, you know you're not doing it like they're doing it, and we need to be doing X, Y, and Z because this is how, this, that, and the third. But literally, I will feel frequently all the time this urge to get ahead of myself when I'm being told to wait, because
Yes.
the path is being laid out before you. It's kind of like you only have two platforms, and each one, you can only take a step when the other one comes in front of, comes in front of the other one, and comes in front of the other one, and comes in front of the other one. But until that platform comes back to get you, you just have to wait, and
Yes.
that's That's tough. I mean, it's tough to stay in your own lane. It's tough to follow your own unique path, and it's even more tough because I think a lot of us are doing things that have not been done before here. And when you're doing unheard of things, you're the one carrying that torch. You're the one
Yeah.
building the things, and having to stay on your unique path is rough. It's rough.
Yeah, it's an initiation, and we do sometimes
Yeah.
have to slow down to speed up, I find, and a lot of
Yeah.
us find that uncomfortable, to like sit with the feelings or sit with the knowingness and like actually process. And I can say for me on my path on the earlier stages, although it wasn't wrong, a lot of what was fueling my kind of reactive state was fear and not allowing myself to kind of dance with and process the emotions, to the point where
Yes.
it's easy to get like dopamine hits by the
Wow.
next thing and
That
the next thing and the next thing,
that
instead of
that
integrating.
yes, that's what exactly what it is. That's the term. The integration and activation process. Like I think we think at a humanistic ED level, kind of like what you were saying about expecting the ascension and activations during the lockdown times to have happened a lot faster than what it did. I think we think at a 3D mindset, a humanistic mindset, that this whole integration process would happen like, kind of
Yeah.
very, it is not like an overnight process. It's not like an instant gratification thing. We are not in an instant. This whole process it's a lot of delayed gratification.
Yes, and the
Del-
what I've come to really see is, and I'm sure lots of listeners have heard this or used the language, 3D, 5D. And what I see is so many of us are actually in the 4D,
in the
where we've got
40.
kind of a foot in either door. And I find, I even created a whole program, Transcending the Matrix. Like, how do we actually do this? Is number one,
Hmm.
first realizing like we've got to drop the separation kind of energy, and also to transcend the matrix of this 3D paradigm doesn't necessarily mean fully removing ourselves right now from it when we're still existing and playing within the
Correct.
collective timeline and experience. And the 5D to me, if we don't want to bypass and we actually want to speed up the collective timeline, is really ultimately more of a frequency and an
Yes.
embodiment of who are we choosing to be and how are we choosing to respond and what choices are we making that
Yes.
creates a more linear 5D and beyond kind of reality. And
Correct.
that's where I feel like a lot of us are at is
Yes.
it's not about denouncing the 3D or wronging it. Or I used to get like see other people and kind of judge them and be like, oh, those muggles, like, why aren't people awake yet? And kind of be in that energy. But now I go, like, when I see people in fear or separation, I
Right.
truly feel compassion, and love. And I go,
Exactly.
wow, they must be
Exactly.
feeling a lot of fear. I've been there before, and like
Right.
hold the vision and the love while also not entangling myself more than I need to in like the 3D paradigm of things,
Exactly.
which ripples into like, how do we do business? How do we show up in our relationships? What kind of foods? All of the things in our day to day life can
It's
be on a 5D frequency, or it can be in like a lower vibrational state. Neither is right or wrong, but in terms of experiencing the more ascensionary path, I
exactly.
feel like that's where the magic lies, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Do you have an example to give to people that would be like, how can you more effortlessly blend the two
Yeah.
or no?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like when it's blending it, first off is realizing we can just take the labels off of things. For what I feel like as humans, even awakened humans, we love to label, and our mind likes to try to make sense of things, but
Okay, what
we
is
need
this?
to
Yes.
prioritize, yeah, feeling and paying attention to our experience that we are having. And an example is if we're in a lower vibrational state, let's say, and somebody's projecting onto us, and maybe they're saying like, what are you doing with your little business? That's so dumb. Why don't you go back to corporate? Like, I think a
Right.
lot of business owners, like,
That's kind of
we
personal, Jenna.
yeah, like we've had many of us those experiences with the little
Yes.
business and these things.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like to drop into a lower vibrational state might be us going into defending and needing to prove, or
Right.
taking a stab back, or like kind of dropping and meeting somebody in that energy, which
In
really is
that
just
level.
dropping our energy, versus
Right.
being at a point where we can intentionally, because it doesn't always come natural, but to
Yeah.
be not above them, but above that vibrational state
That.
where
Exactly.
somebody can say something like that. And basically, whether we're saying it or we're thinking it, but basically, like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. And
Right.
just
Be like,
carry on, like knowing
all
what
right.
we know to be true, and not
Exactly.
taking on. Because I feel like that's where a lot of us dip in our energy, is we take on, whether empathically from like the bigger collective,
Right.
or even just in these day to day interactions with people where it kind of takes us down a notch, but it doesn't have to.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What are some common struggles that you see when embarking on the spiritual path and embracing your gifts and divine purpose with people that you work with or just
Mhm.
in general?
I would say, I mean, a lot of related to what we're talking about in terms of our programming and bringing in these old paradigm approach type things, whether we're
Right.
talking business or just in our day to day life, where we're looking for the blueprint from other people or society and not really trusting ourselves, which even outside of business, it can be like, I'll take an example of like a very trending kind of topic right now, which would be things like what people eat. I know for me personally, for quite a
Yes.
while, I was getting very sucked in to the narrative that you had to eat in a certain way in order to ascend fully. And
Right.
personally, now I don't subscribe to that, because that feels like another construct. It feels like more of a matrix trap. And I
Same.
do hold a belief in knowing within myself, like it feels like my truth is that, yes, we will reach a certain frequency in our physical vessels that we will become breatharians. Like I fully believe that there's a path available to us of essentially immortality and not needing food
Food.
to sustain
Right.
ourselves because we can receive that life force energy. And I feel like that's already happening. And I
Happening.
also feel like a lot of us need more sustenance than
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
to really transition on a cellular level. And
Level.
that those are the kinds of traps where I feel like we have to come back to our own truth, because I was actually decreasing my frequency and quite frankly making myself ill by trying to eat and follow anything that feels kind of dogmatic,
You're
where
right.
we feel heavy. And this is actually just a really great reminder for anybody listening is I distill it down to this: the truth is light, the lie is heavy. And
Heavy.
what is true or not true within each of us can vary because we're all sovereign individuals. But whether we're thinking in our business or our food choices or our relationship, like any of it, if we tune in and we can body dose, we can muscle check, we can use a pendulum, like there's tools that can help us kind of tune into that depending on
Right.
how attuned we are. Because I do feel like it's like a muscle, that we
Yes.
can
Yes.
strengthen. But we have that ability to literally sense, is this light? Does it feel
Yes.
easy? Most of us gaslight ourselves and we're like, oh, it couldn't be that easy. So then we like go back to what feels heavy because
Heavy.
that's the matrix. Like that's the 3D, is it
Right.
feels heavy. It's not true. It's not like the true program. It's just something we've been programmed by.
You're used
And
to.
that's
Right.
where
You're used to.
I make my decisions.
Right.
Yeah. It's like
Yes.
it's not comfortable necessarily what the truth is, but there's that lightness in our body. And that's, I feel like, the biggest indicator between these things that anybody can apply to any situation.
Yeah. And you made the point. I said this on a previous podcast episode of where a lot of times people get, it's almost like triggered and it feels uncomfortable or unnerving, kind of like irritating to experience something that is true, light, and pure because of being
Yeah.
so much, just doused with everything very like heavy and negative, like what you just said, the so much of the bad, but then experiencing the good and being kind of like shell shocked and afraid of it, and then kind of running back the opposite direction to the bad because it's like a trauma bond, like it's like familiar, you know and
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
a real
This
thing.
is the biggest thing
People,
that plagues.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
I forgot what it's called. The best example that I can give to it is, again, like people get used to feeling really shitty, and so then
Yeah.
when you start feeling good, it's like, oh my God, what is this? Like, oh no, it's
Yeah.
a panic.
It's like a form to me of like Stockholm syndrome, and we gaslight
Yes.
ourselves like it couldn't be this good. And I think that's
This.
the biggest thing that kind of plagues our world, and especially awakened people, because it's like they can see it beyond the veil, they can
Hmm.
sense that there's more here, they're awakening and ascending, but they're still gaslighting themselves because that's how deep the
Right.
programming goes, where we're basically going into limitation and lack and
Hmm.
scarcity and
Hmm. Hmm.
suffering and separation, all the things that have, like, these are
The
enslavement codes that have been
boxes.
placed on
Yes.
humanity. Exactly. Except the true human template and the truth of who we are is love and light, and not in like just love and light kind of way, but truly like
Right.
unity, love, light, like where we're vibrating at that level.
Yes.
And it's almost seems too easy. It's like so uncomplicated. It's so pure that we go, oh,
Right.
it couldn't be like that. And that's like,
Okay.
I feel like some
Yeah.
of our biggest work is like, say when something good happens, most of us go into a default contraction of, what if it never gets any better? What if this is as good as it gets? What if it all crumbles? As opposed to, like say in business too, like someone will sign a new client, but subconsciously they're going, well, what if I never get another one again? Instead of celebrating the new
Right.
client. And so these are the
Right.
kinds of moments where we train ourselves as like a Jedi to
Yes.
go into possibility. And whether we're feeling it or saying it, like personally, I like to use a lot of kind of clearing statement, rhetorical kind of questions, where when things like that happen, I go, wow, how does it get any better than this? Or what else is possible? Rather than letting myself drop back down into these programmings that are meant to not let me access the higher timelines that are really available.
I like that. I like that. What did you call it? Clearing? Clearing what?
Yeah, like clearing statements, clearing questions, because they're kind of
Yeah, I like
rhetorical,
that.
you know, and I think that's the thing too, is a lot of us are not creating space for the divine, you know, God source consciousness to
Hmm.
actually co-create with us. Like we put it back again all on ourselves from this
Right.
programming. And this is where I feel like we don't have to say from a manifestation perspective, we don't have
Hmm.
to be creating everything with all the weight on our shoulders. Of course, there's aligned action required. I don't believe we just bypass. And I know lots of people like to sell that online of like, just manifest, you know, and like learn the
Right,
law of
like
attraction. It's all going to fall in your lap. But I believe more in a balanced approach of aligned action, and it's more the energy of how can I support the process? Like how can I help to accelerate the inevitable of like really
right,
holding my vision, trusting it's possible for me, inviting and creating space for miracles, for unexpected and expected manifestations, and I'm
right.
supporting the process by like taking the action. And basically to me it's like take the weight off our shoulders.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing where I always say that like the universe, God's source universe has to have a void space to fill with
Yeah.
your desires, like you have to, but you have to allow it. That means you have to release. That means you have to let go. That means you have to create that open void
Yeah.
to receive. You have to be open to receive. And that's
Yes.
a lot easier said than done, I think. I mean, it's that way for me, and I think also for others, but it's
I
you have
agree.
to be open to receive.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. And like you said, easier said than done. And it's a
Yeah,
practice. Like everything I feel like so far we've talked about today, it's a practice. It's not a
right,
pass or fail, a right or a wrong. It's a journey that we can
yeah,
deepen into, which means we can help to co-create and kind of manipulate the results in a good way,
right,
while being open and surrendering to the path and process, which even on the awakening topic is kind of the same thing, where we play a role in this, and there is this collective dominant timeline. Like we have to sometimes take some of the weight of the world, I think, off our shoulders, that we got to look after us and our energy first and foremost. And that's also like the
exactly.
best way we can shift the collective
That,
timeline and
yes,
frequency as well. Yeah.
yes, yes. And thank you. I'm glad that's something that you mentioned because it is. I think that gets overlooked so much because everyone's like, oh no, you need to focus on this and focus on doing that and this outward focus. But really, you are the most important project. You are the most important thing because if you're not okay and you're not grounded and balanced and taking care of yourself, like you can't pour from an empty cup. You just can't.
Totally.
You can't.
Yeah.
So,
You
but
hit the
anyways.
nail on the head, sister.
Well, anyways, Jenna, this has been amazing. And if you have any closing statements or things that you want to say, go ahead. Just like I want you to stay on after I finish hit the stop for the recording for like 2 or 3 minutes so it will finish uploading. But
Perfect.
prior to me doing that, if you have anything else you want to say or share, feel free to do so now.
Yeah. I feel like my closing thought for everybody today is one of my own favorite personal mottos, which is hold the vision, not the circumstance. This is a time, whether we're talking business, ascension, personal, any area, to get really clear on what our vision is. And not only our vision, but what I like to call our vision beyond the vision, because most of us, number one, have forgot how to dream. And
Yeah,
number two, when we focus on our vision, like let's say in business, somebody's focusing on signing their next client or having a 10K month, most of the time we're still subtly operating from survival and putting a lot of
right,
pressure on ourselves in these things. So when we apply the vision beyond the vision, so what I mean by this is let's say somebody has a 10K month, we go beyond that and go, well, what's my reality like on the other side of that? Or what's my reality like on the other side of this breakup? Or what's my reality like on the other side of XYZ? And most of the time we go, it's actually really good over here. But our body on a primal level is usually going, I don't want to go over there. It's unknown. I'm going to die. And this is how we kind of move through the uncharted territory because let's say for somebody having a 10K month in their business and they look around on the other side as they're visualizing or journaling and they go, that actually feels really good over there. I'd be having some more support and I'd be investing in this or whatever. And then we can connect to that. Now we're holding a bigger vision. So we've expanded our capacity.
Right.
Second, we've now made the kind of next thing that we're trying to create, the next milestone. It's like small fish. It's not a big deal. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's naturally going to happen on the way to this other thing. So now we've made it more normalized and more
Yeah.
palatable to our nervous system. And this is how I feel like we can apply these things in all of our areas for manifestation, for ascension. And really, when we hold this bigger vision, that way we're doing it no matter what the circumstances are. Maybe in linear time, it doesn't happen as fast as you think. Also, maybe it happens in a different way than you think, maybe faster,
Exactly.
maybe better.
Exactly.
But to me, it's about holding that vision, whether that means for somebody they're visualizing it every day or they're journaling it and they're reading it every day. However, it floats everybody's boat. There's no right way to do it, but the principle is holding the vision and ideally a vision beyond the vision. And I feel like that's a good closing thought for everybody today to
Yeah.
like really sink into something tangible.
Yes, it's a perfect closing thought, and it's something that again I think we can all embody very very easily, and it's a great piece of advice. Also, what can people look out for from you? What are you doing right now? What's your main squeeze? What's the thing that you're offering right now?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, I have many magical things on the go, and the best way to find me and plug into all that is to go to my website, soulmatestrategy.com, where I've got a podcast. I got V coming on there soon, so that's a good thing to plug into. Come find me on Instagram or Facebook. That's where I hang out the most. And I work with people in a range of ways, both on their businesses, but also taking them through programs like Transcending the Matrix, which is really about helping light leaders, light leaders, and leaders to just really awaken themselves and hold their vision on a bigger level. So my work really goes leadership, business strategy, and if anyone's listening and that's vibing, then what I suggest, go to my website or reach out to me directly because I love to make relationships and connections and just chat. So I'm always open to have a conversation.
Sounds good. Jenna, thank you so much for being on, and I look forward to being on your podcast and working with you and all the things. There's a lot that I can learn, and there's a lot that you have taught me, and I'm sure everybody else as well. So thank you so much for gracing us and blessing us with your presence and your knowledge. And I look forward to us working together in the future.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. So just stay on for like a minute after I hit the stop.